Hey, how you doing? Let's do it to it. Okay, let's see what section we're diving in now. Okay. Fischer versus Spassky, 1992. This wasn't the world champion one. This may have been their rematch. I'm not exactly sure uh, when he came out and faced Spassky again. E2 to E4, A5, knight F3, knight C6. Bobby's white, by the way. So he's playing Arroyo Lopez. This is the Columbus, and maybe a closed variation. H3. That's to get this move in here. D5. Just developing. Now the whole file is locked down. This is a closed game. And A3. Boris wants to try to, at the right moment, pull the trigger on F7, F5. Clearly, A takes B is actually a blunder. be this right here would be a mistake. So too soon. So Bobby actually plays rook a3 exclam. This is the best one. He's not ready to open up the position just yet. Will lead to a standoff. And the bishop on a7 runs into, there's a potential, oops. And then in there. But as in the previous game, why would white be in a hurry to exchange a pawn and open up the file? So Bobby's not in a hurry to do that. Knight d, f6, rook ea, and then now queen d7. Rook a1 to a2 exclam here. F to c8. Queen c1. Bishop f8. Queen a1. Setting up the legendary Alekhine gun, a powerful formation of tripling on the file where the queen places herself behind both of the rooks. Queen e8, and then the knight actually plays f1 double exclam here. Very deep fissure intends to locate and try to get and go after b5 via d2, b1, a3 after the exchange happens here. So bishop e7, knight d2, king g7, knight b1, knight takes e4 is an interesting move by Boris Spassky. Black decided to sacrifice a piece for counterplay rather than sitting passively and basically perish in with this move here. A takes, rook takes, rook takes, rook takes, queen takes, bishop takes, and then knight a3, and b5 falls. This variation shows the point of Fischer's 27th move. The rest of the game, which has nothing to do with our theme, is still exciting and interesting. F5, bishop c. A takes b, it takes rook a7, king f6, or king f7, f6, knight bd2, takes, rook takes, rook a8, g4 to takes g, And see, this does go back to one of our themes, though, in Andrew Solstice, that always be prepared to, let's say you're up a piece, always be prepared to sacrifice that piece back for counterplay. So, like Bobby Fischer at this point here, he was actually up a whole piece. But the problem is, if he didn't kind of get some sort of counterplay, some sort of attack going, he'd actually get going to passivity. I know what you were thinking. He has this here, but what is the bishop actually doing? Do you know what I mean? What is the bishop actually doing on b6? And so it kind of had to give its life up at that point. But what it did was it indefinitely made an outpost for the knight here. The knight has an outpost for life now. See, if the bishop had moved here, potentially, after maybe bishop, maybe queen here, knight here, maybe not knight there. Let's say bishop here. Then you have something like this. And yeah, you had an outpost, but the queen's active, so. So 40. Bishop f7. Cover the pawn. Queen d4 check. King e6. Knight f5. Wow, this is cool. Yeah. Bishop f8. If pawn takes, I hope you see that that's checkmate. So that's not just a sacrifice, that's a mate sacrifice. This is a really interesting move. King d7. If you're thinking this here, this surprisingly, it's almost, I'm thinking, is it bishop takes that's better? And then maybe knight comes in. Not exactly sure if it might be queen that's actually better. I think it is. The idea if here you just grab the knight, you could do that, and then knight versus bishop. So I'm not. I think that's what Boris saw, and he was just getting pummeled. So he tried to hold on. He's holding everything he can. Queen e1 check. King g2. Bishop d5 check. Bishop e4. Bishop takes e4. Knight takes e4. Bishop e7. Knight takes b5. So Bobby's actually up a whole pawn here. Knight f6, f9, f8. B takes here. Knight e6. And then queen to e5. And there's a nice little threat of check and then winning the queen down here. A nice little puzzle rush trick. And Boris resigned at this point. Now our next section is called controlling the 7th or the 8th rank. The importance of an open slash half open file, creating files, creating them, fighting to dominate them, to infiltrate into the enemy position on them, and use them to pressure weak enemy pawns should be clear by now. But equally important is the enormous power of a rook on the 7th or on the 8th. The 8th rank, or the rook on the 7th or the 8th rank, sorry. The rook on the 8th rank and is exciting are usually of a tactical or attacking nature, and black's rank and back rank mates are part of every beginner's tactical training. So if you're going to have a rook on the 8th, it's usually setting up for a back rank mate, or a pin, or a smother mate, or something like that. Some sort of mating threat. Rook on the 7th is more like Josh's teacher, Bruce Bonifini, said that it's a pig. It just gobbles up. We call him Pac-Man because they go boop, 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 boop. Black, this is a position we got to set up here. So I can't play out the entire game for you. It's just a position that we're going to be looking at. So I got to set up that position, and then we will look at the position. Oops. Go back. There we go. Oops, I almost forgot a queen for white. That wouldn't have been fair for white. White to move here, so we've entered an endgame. So let's put this into a study. Black appears to be okay since his pieces are all defended, and he's even created lift by knight pawn h7 to h6. That stops all of those nasty back ranks threats, doesn't it? However, after queen takes, which move? What does the queen take to win? If you saw this nice tactical move sequence, you were spot on. Excellent job. Are both king h7 instead leaves him a whole rook down. Mate is both sudden and brutal. Our next example is another impressive back rank idea. So we're going to be able to get into some more players being able to play here. There we go. A4, C5, knight F3, D4, knight F3, castles, castles, queen D2, D5, rook A D1. Now we got a battery. Knight takes D4. Knight takes D4. Oops. Bishop E6. A5. Knight D7. And then F4 to cement this pawn. Knight to B6. And if you were wondering why the knight didn't just take, was because of bishop here. So bishop F3. F6. Knight takes D5. Interesting idea here. Nice tactical motif there. That was really nice. takes. And bishop h6 covers this move here. I'm thinking is actually would be a mistake, close to a blunder. No, the knowledge of these back-rank patterns can lead to some nice creative achievements. Our next game is a good example of this. Perfect. d4, knight f6, c4, d6, g3, bishop f5, bishop g2, queen c8, knight c3, oops, knight c3, because you have to keep this covered, otherwise the bishop will come in here. e5, e4, bishop g4, f3, bishop, oops, not h, d7. We want to keep on this long, really long, good diagonal. d5, bishop e7, bishop e3. White's actually the only one with type of counterplay. c5, b takes c, b takes c, and then rook c1. Castle kingside for black, knight ge2, and then bishop h3, castles, rook d8, getting ready for a break. g4, bishop takes, king takes, be there to attack there, knight g3, g6. I know what you're thinking, what about here, right? Well, that stops all that, and after the queen goes back, you have knight f5 here. And rook f2, d5, C takes, C takes D, he takes, knight takes D5, knight takes D5, rook takes D5. Black's behind in development. His king suffers from some weakness, some dark square weaknesses. White makes immediate use of these type of ideas and plays Queen C8 check. Exclaim. Bishop F8. The queen takes is actually a scary move to play, but instead instantly bringing to mind what we had done in our prior last pattern. But black doesn't like the look of queen takes c6, probably because if he did do that, queen takes, oops, I have to, there we go, sorry about that, team. That was a little interesting there. Queen takes d7, rook d2, knight b6, queen takes e5 with a solid extra pawn. I have king king g7, queen c1 is immediately decisive if f6, rook c7, queen b4, rook d2, rook takes, bishop takes, queen d6, knight e4, queen e6, rook takes d7 check. Exclaim at this point. Queen takes, bishop h6 check, king f, and then queen c4 check, king e8, queen g8 check, king d7. Hey, how you doing? And then bishop f8. And black's lifespan is nearly over on this type of a position. Because if this move here, check, 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 and it's almost game, set, and match at this point. That's why bishop f8 was played. Queen takes, and queen and bishop this is a exclam. Okay, I'll do my best. So it's not queen h. I think the reason this doesn't work is because of here. But actually that still would be mate. Rook d2 was actually played here. Rook b2. If rook a5, familiar territory, huh? Bishop here, knight d7, rook takes, rook, king c7, rook takes, d7, queen takes d7, and then kabang. d8, knight d7, takes, king g7, and then bishop e3. Black is down material and under tremendous pressure. The end couldn't have been pleasant for the second player. Rook c7, knight e4. They're just going for it. Everything's Operation Go. The idea is potentially to play in there, but it wouldn't work. Knight c3, bishop f2. He has to keep a hold of this knight. And then g5, and this is lockdown, a total lockdown now. That's an exclam move. Knight bd7. Knight to b7, I mean. Bishop takes. A takes. Rook takes, queen c2, and then king to g3. And I really don't see any potential way for black to make any progress here. Rook g8, king f7, and a to f8 check, king e7, and then rook e8 check. And what's basically going to happen is if the king comes here, that's checkmate. If the king comes here, then what you have is a potential check. If you come up here, you have check. If you come back, check. You come here, and I think that's checkmate that way. So the only way you can go is up the board, and then after that the queen drops off the board. Yeah, so you have a question here. We've seen a rook on the 8th. I'll wait till you get the question put in. We've seen a a rook on the 8th rank can lead to all sorts of fun. However, control of the 7th rank is particularly a prize because it's not only annoyance. The enemy king, it annoys the enemy king, but it also targets all the enemy pawns that sit on that rank. Oh, okay. Alrighty. Let's see how we're doing here. Perfect. Got enough time for another one. Wait to move. I just want to make sure I have everything right. Perfect. Oh, one sec. I will answer that, Rook. Well, what that statement means is you have to think about. We're asked one question before we begin into this. I'm glad that this happened because a lot of Philindor statements were really wise. Like there was a question that just was asked. Philindor said an attack should never begin before the pawns leading. It are thoroughly supported. Without this precaution, the attack will be quite useless. Well, it makes sense because think about how do you determine what a French defense position is? It's by the pawn structure. So one sec, I'll just pull up another board, and we all know and we'll just do a board analysis. We all know that if black plays this, we play this here. This sets up for a French defense, a standard French defense. And we also know that if you play here, this is advanced. So what would happen is if white, what Philidor is saying is if white is allowed to keep this advanced variation, we'll use this as an example. What he's going to want to do is develop his pieces around the pawns in the center because white has more space, and it would be kind of silly if you think about this. Let's say we develop all these pieces here. I'll give you an example, and then we just develop, and then we just play stuff like this, and then let's just say that somehow we're able to get a position like this, and then let's say knight castles. And do you see how black is developing all of his pawns? White allowed black to get this massive pawn chain setup. Yes, I understand there's an outpost for the white pieces. I got that. But if you notice that the majority, like let's just say here, the majority of the pieces, like the knight, is developing behind the pawns of black. The pawns are, the pawns are in front of the pieces. And then let's say a bishop comes out, we'll say right here. We have a bishop here coming out, and let's say that the queen comes up, okay, castles. And if you notice, these pawns are advanced. We waited until these pawns came up, pawns came up, pawns came up before we developed behind them. And white doesn't have any space. So look how cramped white is. This is what Philindor was talking about, is white tried to develop without any pawn moves before he basically got his pieces going. And now white's the one that's in a cramped position at this present moment, and on the verge, surprisingly, of almost losing. Almost. Because he doesn't have enough compensation to really get an attack going. All of his pieces are cramped up. And so I hope that answered your question. I wanted to give a visual example of that for you. This is basically what Philindor is talking about. This is the optimum, and I'll turn the board so you can see. You could see this is Philindor. This is what Philindor was talking about. How you develop your pawns. See, he says an attack should never begin before pawns on lead are leading. It is let's see. Let me make sure. Let me get that. I read it too fast. Attack should never begin before the pawns leading it are thoroughly supported, and without this precaution, the attack will be quite useless. Okay, and if we notice, our bishop, like what we've been talking about, is a really good piece too, because the pawn's supported by this pawn on e7 or e6. So our bishop supports it, and all of our pieces are ready. I really do hope that helps with that statement. That's really the only thing I can kind of come up with. Philindor was really wise when it came to understanding the pawn's power, because these little soldiers here, these little foot soldiers, could end up one day becoming a queen. So he understood that how valuable one pawn could be in a game. It's a game changer. One pawn could turn into a queen and win for you. In our last example, how a pawn can get here and basically right here and cramp down. Okay, perfect. Then that was worth it. Okay, now we're gonna get right back into our lesson on the rook on the 7th. You're gonna get to see how this is a windmill, and how a windmill, even though you're down material right now, white is, could really be devastating. Black is a piece ahead, but a series of discovered checks. This kind of position is known as a windmill. Will divest him of most of his army. Basically remove. That's a nice word of saying white will. This windmill will basically eat up all of the 7th rank, and then eventually a rook at the very end, and it'll be white who's winning. And I hope that if you're watching this on a recording, yeah, it is crazy. If you're watching this on a recording, you should stop it here and set up the board at this point. It's really fun to do these type of puzzles. I did this one in the Reassess Your Chess 4th edition. It's really cool. You can actually gobble everything on the 7th and a rook. And just go over it. It's fun to see how the power of a windmill, so that you're not afraid to, at certain times, even sacrifice a queen to set up a windmill. It's just fun to go over and learn. The point of this extreme example is to highlight the power of the rook on the 7th rank, and also how many black goodies are sitting there waiting to be eaten. So let's start off. The first one is this, check. So the king has to come here. Then we come back. He goes king h8. Then we grab the second one. He comes back. Check. He comes there. We grab a third one. There. We grab a fourth one. There. And then we grab, and then kazang. And even at this point, let's just say the king comes up. It actually stopped here, but let's just say the king comes up. If you don't want to worry about the rook, the knight, and you just kind of want to win the game, and you just go like this. I've played a game and I just took the rook, the knight. I just decided I'm a whole piece up. Just grab it. There's no way that black's going to be able to, and there's no way that he's going to be able to stop this. The pawns are also, if you notice, are also on dark colored squares. So you don't really have to push if you're thinking, oh, I'm going to just send my pawn screaming up the board. You don't have to do that. You can take a second and get your king involved. Just get your king involved, and if something like this, then you can play bishop here. And if he comes there, you just grab this. And then if he comes down here, you just grab that. Now there's no way in the world that you're ever going to lose. This is resignable at this point. 5 passed pawns. Your king's active in the center. Just remember, you don't have to, even when you're a passed pawn up like this, you don't have to just go like this. That weakens your pawns. The only way that the king could get to your pawn chain here or here is by attacking this base pawn here or here. So leave it sometimes on a2 is a really nice nice idea, just to wait. And remember, you have another soldier in the fight, the king. Just bring the king up the board. And I believe this is where it ends. King g8, rook a7. Yeah. Enough checks. It's time for one final last meal, and this is actually where the game ends. So I extended it out a little bit further. So we'll just put it here so that you know that white is winning. This was just a little bit extra for you to go over and see. Okay, that seems more fantasy than reality, but a rook on the 7th often wields serious power, as shown in our next game. I think, let's see, what time is it? I think we have enough time for one more game. We'll do one more game. This is a Jeremy Silman one. Yeah, it's not too long. He's going to show from his own example. Oops, I can actually just, he has all the lines done. This is a game from his own play. So, you know, if you want to really improve as a chess player, go over your own chess games. Even the losses, I know they're painful. It's not fun to do that. But just go over them, find out you know, some of your best highlights and some of your worst, and find out what caused them, what you were thinking at the time, and you'll improve. I think that's, wait a second, let's see, BIYIASAS, okay. Okay. let's do it to it. It only lasted 46 moves and it was mate, so this shouldn't be too long. And I won't talk very much about these because I want to get to the part. This is a Slav defense. You can actually transpose from a Slav into a French sometimes. So I'm just gonna, the reason I'm being silent is I want to get to the good part where he starts talking to us about what he's thinking. This is all preparation for that. It's always nice to put a rook on where the queen is. Not if you ever wonder why the players move the queens off of this file, a rank, is because they don't like to have a rook staring down the queen. Doubling up. Now we got some power. We got a pin here. And then we trade. The Grandmaster Baisa was a fantastic defensive player. So one can understand why he thought he'd be able to hold this quiet endgame. However, his position turned out to be far worse than he imagined. Knight b5. Rook takes, and then rook takes. But let's take a look to see if rook c8, bishop takes, pawn takes, rook takes, rook takes. Oh, so he doesn't take. Yeah, because if this happened, this would actually be more beneficial for white because of how weak the king is and how wrecked the pawn structure is. So at this point, he just played knight takes. And also a solid pawn up. So rook d7 now, and the bishop and this pawn, the whole 7th rank is under white's control. If you notice, this way and that way all through. Bishop c6, rook takes, bishop takes here, pawn takes. Well, that's weird. It says that rook d7, bishop, rook takes a, rook takes b5, c takes. Oh! So basically this is also a type of winning idea too. Rook takes a7 is also a type of winning idea. So he played rook takes, rook c8, back rank protection. Rook here, rook to e7, not d7. Rook e7 loses material to takes here. Because the knight, if the knight were to take, then you have a mate, so you can't do that. That's why rook c8. Bishop takes. Jeremy Silman was able to fracture the pawns, and then rook d7, and now there's just too much of an attack that's coming down the road. Suddenly black is completely lost here. The rook on the 7th, which eyes a7, or b7 piece, a7 pawn, and f7, combined with my queenside majority, superior kingside structure, and active minor pieces will prove to be far more than he can handle. So rook b8 to cover here, and then f4. This frees up no more back rank mates for his opponent. The pawn also shuts down black's f4 shuts down the idea of e5 here. And if e5, then we can actually play, we can support it, denying black e5. a6, knight d6 attacks the bishop, knight d4, bishop h5, bishop c6, rook c7 to attack. This knight's the only thing that's holding this bishop intact, so if we can somehow dislodge this knight, we win the bishop. Rook d8, knight c, and we're getting ready for a double attack on here. Bishop e4, knight takes the pawn, bishop e1, bishop takes check, if bishop g6 here, bishop takes, h takes, and then rook d7. Rook takes d7, knight takes d7. It's an easy win for white. Thanks to a 1 to 3 majority. So if he plays here to hold, the 1 to 3 majority is going to be way too powerful here. He can actually play here. And if the king comes up, then the knight could actually come over. So maybe instead the knight may come up there, but then you have that there, and after you takes, so you have to you come up here to stop that pawn from advancing. If he gets here,
you can actually play this sneaky move, a4 exclam. This, in my opinion, this is an exclam move because he can't take that because the pawn runs. Can't take here, the pawn runs, so he's got to go back. And then the king slides over, and if the pawn pushes, you don't really. You could take if you wanted to, but I like this move here. And just shut everything down. Maybe taking might be better because it gives you more spots. Then he has to push. Maybe not. I actually, now that I think about it, I like this because after here we can actually lock this down over here. Then if he plays there, we come back. If he tries to get a passer, then we come in and our pawns are protected. The other way, if he's able to do this, we can, I guess, somewhat lock the position down. So we'd have to come over here. You could take here. I think we're still winning. We're still winning, but just why put yourself through that? Rook b1. Bishop takes f7. King f8. Bishop h5. With the 7th pawn removed, the rook now reigns supreme over the entire 7th rank. Queen takes. Rook takes check. King g8, knight d7. Playing directly for mate on the 7th rank isn't a 7th rank is not just a smorgasbord. It's also constructing to a nasty mating threat. So it's also a construction. What he's doing is he's constructing a mating net on the 7th. It's not just to look pretty, basically, what he's trying to say. Oh, it's also conducted to several nasty mating threats. So yeah, this sets up for several mating threats on the 7th. So bishop b1 to hold on to the pawn here. Knight takes check. King h8. King f2. Knight takes b3. g4. Exclam here. Intending f4 to f5, blocking out the black bishop and defend the bishop from the defense of h7, and forcing mate via the Arabian mate rook takes h7. So rook d7 check, king g3. e1 was even stronger here. Knight c5, f5, knight e4, knight takes e4, bishop takes e4, f takes e6. Now Jeremy Silva's got a pass pawn. Rook g2 check, king f4, bishop c6, rook c7 to attack the bishop, rook a4, bishop a4 I mean, e7, rook f2, king g3, rook f8. Wait, f8 can't be played. Huh? Oh, rook f8. And we shared a good laugh when I snapped it off with e takes equals queen mate. As nice as a rook on the 7th might be, two rooks on the 7th, known as pigs on the 7th, are even better. This creates various material winning scenarios and also sets up many potential mating threats. And we'll go over that tomorrow. There's a game that we'll be going over. So what we've learned so far is we just need to do a quick summing up of what we learned. We'll go to the section and do a quick reread because we always do. Control. This is the section we're in right now. Control of the 7th or of the 8th. We got to see both, so we're going to read the importance of an open, half-open files. Open or half-open files. Create. Let's see. Sorry, I have to redo that because he has a backslash for some of it, and I want to read it just precise. The importance of an open backslash half open files, creating them, fighting to dominate them, infiltrating into the enemy position on them, and using them to pressure weak enemy pawns. Should be clear by now, but equally important is the enormous power of a rook on the 7th or the 8th rank. 8th rank, curiously, are usually of a tactic or attacking nature, and black's back rank mates are part of every beginner's training, tactical training. So what he's saying there is even a rook on an open or a half open file could be devastating. When it hits a 7th, you got to see what happens. It sets up a windmill. And when it's an 8th, on the 8th rank or the 1st rank for white and black, you're talking about some sort of tactical motif that you can set up and dominate. So that's what we're going over, is you have to create sometimes an opening, maybe even by sacrificing a pawn with proper calculation and positional understanding. You'll be able to win. Like if you're facing two knights and the position is close, and you have a rook and your opponent has two knights, you have to open the position, otherwise you'll lose. Okay, we'll stop with that. Remember, what we always talk about is to take what you know, what Bruce Lee says, and apply it and be willing to do something with it always. And remember, the choice to receive the Lord Jesus as Lord and Savior of your life is as important as where to place a rook or to open an open file or a half open file. That's as important, because eternal destination is huge. And we all have to one day decide what are we going to do with the Lord Jesus. And so what we have to remember is to take what knowing is not enough, you must apply. Willing is not enough, you must do. And that's the Bruce Lee motto. And if you're at a plateau right now, just keep pushing forward. Don't stop. Don't quit. You can do this. You can do this. And that's what the Team Chess Cruncher motto is all about. Is we hang up our coats, we hang up our hats, we sit down and study when most won't. Team Chess Cruncher does, and that makes all the difference. And as Wesley so says through the Lord Jesus, and as I say, God bless. And I'll see you next time on Chess Cruncher TV. Have a blessed morning, afternoon, and evening. Lord willing, I'll be back on tomorrow. We'll keep pushing forward and learning and improving. Remember what Hannibal Smith said, now it makes sense that even inside of a random position, there's always a plan. And when we find it, we get to say, I love it when a plan comes together. Okay, 2 thumbs up. Hoorah, be blessed. Keep studying chess, having fun, honoring the Lord Jesus, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye, Team Chess Cruncher. Hoorah.